Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio today I have two phenomenal women that I have known for quite a long time. These women have just some of the sweetest people that you ever want to meet. And it's been a pleasure reconnecting with them and having them on the show today. They've taken time out of their busy schedules to share a little bit of what their life journey has been like in hopes of inspiring and encouraging others. So, without any further ado, let me introduce to you Miss Marsha Lovett and Miss Kim Shields. Ladies, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you with me today.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Good to be here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a pleasure just hearing your voices and seeing your faces. I know we've been staying connected over social media, but it's been a long time since I've actually had this level of contact with you in a while. So it's a pleasure, as always, to be able to do that.
Hmm.
All right. So before we jump in to everything for the show, I do want to give you both an opportunity to just share with our audience a little bit about yourself. So I'll start with you, Marcia. Kind of tell the audience a little bit about who you are, where you're from, that kind of thing. So.
Well, okay. I am from Madison, Wisconsin. I was born and raised there, and I grew up with an older sister and with my parents. And they started the travel bug in me young. We traveled a lot, and that has continued into my adulthood. Um, I lived in Chicago for a number of years before moving back recently, well, somewhat recently, back to Wisconsin to help care for my parents as they were aging and dealing with their respective diseases that they have. So I am back in Madison. And I work at the University of Wisconsin, and I'm a director of pre-college programs. So my background has always been in education, and providing access to education is a passion of mine. So I've either been on the college admission side or in the pre-college world. So, and that's a little bit about me where I am right now. I am still single, and I don't have any children of my own, but I have a lot of nieces and nephews through my sister and through very close friends. So I enjoy that role.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for sharing that about you.
Hmm.
All right, and Kim, tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
Alrighty. Well, my name is Kimberly Shields. Everybody always calls me Kim, of course, less syllables. I am by profession a dentist. I practice general dentistry here in Winchester, Virginia. I've been here in Virginia probably about since 2004 or so. Grew up in Chicago, of course, where I met you in grammar school, the wonderful Beasley Academic Center. And, kind of, went from there, always had a love for science and healthcare and just learning and all of that. So, I went through undergrad as a biology major, chemistry minor. Um, First got out of undergrad and I was trying to decide, well, what do I want to do? I know I want to do something, in the science field, and ended up basically going to one of my counselors in undergrad, like that last year. And he was like, what are you doing this summer? And I'm like, I think I'm going to work and, blah, blah, blah. But, he was like, I got a program I want you to think about. And I'm like, because we did a lot of externships and stuff like that in the summers anyway. And so this time I was just like, I don't know, what is it? He was like, it's dentistry. Now, before you say no, and I'm like, because he knew I was really interested in, medicine and a pharmacology program and whatnot. And so he was like, just think about it. He gave me the information, thought about it. He's like, well, just apply, even if you don't get it, just apply for me. So I applied, went to this summer program at University of Missouri School of Dentistry, and the rest is history. Loved it. My scores were really, really good. And so they were really interested because, of course, as you know, if you test well, that gets you places. So, um, and I actually love it. I love working with my hands. I love the people, and dentistry is kind of, it's physical, it's emotional, it's mental. You're getting people who are like super anxious and kind of talking them off of the ledge and trying to convince them that okay, you can do this. So, but yeah, dentistry has been what I've been doing. Big change going from Chicago to this little small town, in Virginia, but it's nice though. Love it. close to DC, close to New York. So, I can kind of get places, do things, and things like that. But one brother grew up with, both my parents in Chicago. And, we didn't have a lot, but, I still think it was a charmed childhood. I mean, we did a lot, saw a lot. And, I guess that kind of made us who we are today. So, not a whole lot, but, hey,
Mm.
Awesome,
we
awesome.
we got here.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And just for the audience and as well as Marcia, my guest, it's so refreshing to hear as I'm hearing Kimberly share this. It's as she stated, we've known each other since elementary school. When I tell you Kim was
Wow.
so quiet, so super shy, like her voice
Yes,
was
I
at a
was.
whisper, like literally
Yep,
as a whisper.
yep.
And just to hear
And,
this, like this personality that just burst out of her, it's
Oh, I love it.
exciting and it's wonderful. I mean, she was always a sweet person, but it's just interesting just hearing her and that energy and everything. It's like wow. And even and of course I know Marcia from college,
Yep.
and same thing. She wasn't this wild crazy girl or anything like that, but just to see this energy and so you could just the transformation of your
Hmm.
personalities and your experiences is just wonderful to see you evolve in a very meaningful and significant way in your
Hmm.
respective lives, and we're just getting to the bare basics of what you've been doing and what you are all about. So that's
Right.
exciting to hear. It's just wonderful to just see that. So I just had to chime in on that one.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you.
right.
It's just phenomenal to see that. So, all right. So, um, that's great stuff that you're doing. But I would like to dig a little bit deeper into this. And I
Hmm.
want to begin. When we talk about our life journeys and the things that we've gone through, good, bad, or otherwise, it's always important, I think, to start from the beginnings. So I want to
Hmm.
I want to delve into that specifically in regards to your childhood. So I would like for you, if you could, just reflect back on growing up and just kind of tell our audience a little bit about fond memories that you have from your childhood, as well as if there were any specific challenges that come to mind from childhood that you found yourself having to face and eventually overcome. I'd be interested in you sharing what that whole experience was like. So I'll jump back to you, Marcia. Just tell us
Hmm.
what was it like growing up in Madison, and just that whole childhood experience for you.
Sure. Well, where do I begin? So growing up in Madison, and for those who are not familiar, it is a predominantly white city, but it's also a very liberal city. And so I feel like I need to throw that in because sometimes I didn't understand until I got older what people may associate with a smaller community and think, oh my gosh, did you have to deal with this, that, and the third? And I really didn't. It's not, I'm not going to say it's not a city without its issues, but not your stereotypical smaller community in the state of Wisconsin. So I will say that I grew up, I had a lot of friends, but I knew very young it was a challenge not to have other friends of color because they just weren't here. But as I mentioned in the earlier segment, that we traveled a lot, and so my extended family, very close with, but we traveled to Atlanta, Mobile, and Arkansas every summer, and sometimes throughout the year if I went down for Mardi Gras or what have you. So I always had a very close relationship with all my cousins, almost as close as siblings. So um, I feel I'm grateful for my parents for always keeping us connected with our extended family, keeping us traveling, experiencing new um, just new experiences, and really taught us how to negotiate relationships with a lot of different people. And so I always felt comfortable stepping into any arena that, although I would desire other people looking more like me, I could still connect and find genuine relationships. Um, we were a close family, our immediate family, so I was very close with my parents. Um, Probably not as close with my sister as one would think. We were 5 years apart. Maybe that had something to do with it, but I think we talk now as adults, my sister and I, and we talk about how she did feel like I was kind of favored. I'm sure. I think my sister was quieter. I was a lot more outgoing. But she was quiet, reserved, very focused on music, where I was out playing sports, I was dancing, and I loved to go up and down the neighborhood, meeting everybody, hanging out, and organizing get-togethers or what have you. So, um, I think as I grew into teenage years, I really blossomed more in my confidence. Kind of early on, I felt compared to someone I look at students that I work with now, and I really do owe that to my parents because they always reminded me of who I am, where I come from, and that expression, no apologies. I learned that a long, long, long time ago to always be authentic and be yourself, and as long as you're honest and humble, you'll be all right. So I those are the things when I think back on childhood. I think about that, and then some of the experiences, I think just I was able to, I think with that foundation, I was really able to kind of weed out people who I never felt peer pressured into doing anything that I either didn't want to do or I knew I shouldn't do. So I really took ownership over choices that I made. I can't honestly remember any major struggles in my childhood and growing up. So I'm very blessed for that, and I don't take that for granted. I think more challenges came about into my adulthood, and I think because of the foundation I had, it has helped me to navigate through those. Hasn't been easy, but I think because of how I was brought up and the experiences I was exposed to, it really helped me to be able to be self-reflective early on, um, and to just kind of own decisions that I made. Again, I'm not going to sound like an angel, like I didn't make any mistakes. I, certainly did, but I think I do look at my childhood. I was blessed. I was very blessed, and I was probably lucky in some situations as well.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. Sounds like a wonderful upbringing that you had and a close,
Hmm.
tight knit family. So that's always
Hmm.
something to be, appreciative of to have that because everybody doesn't. So I'm thankful
Hmm.
that you were able to have that in your life.
Hmm.
On the same question I have for you, Kim, kind of tell us what was it like for you, childhood growing up in Chicago, of course. What was that life like? Fond memories or any challenges that you had to overcome?
Let's see, childhood in Chicago. Um, It was it had its, difficulties growing up on the south side of Chicago. It had its ups and downs, but for the most part, we still did live a pretty charmed life, compared to those around us. I always like the saying that it takes a village because my mom
Hmm.
is from Arkansas, and I heard you say Arkansas, Marcia, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, you got Arkansas roots too.
Yep.
My dad is from Louisiana. And so, both had a lot of siblings. And so we always spent a lot of time, like, even after both my parents passed, it's like my aunts and uncles just kind of stepped in as like, an extension of them, because they knew them and it was their essence. It was just like, oh, even from childhood, going to stay with them, them taking us different places and seeing different things and getting, other kind of takes on life. I always, like that large family life, even though, me myself, it was just me and my brother, but our extended family, was very large. So, whenever I'm talking about cousins, somebody's like, oh, is that such and such? And it's like, oh no, I've got like hundreds of cousins. I'm like, it's probably not the same one. But that kind of really shaped, a lot of my childhood is being, exposed to a lot of different ideas and things like that. They actually, were, as my mom or dad might not have heard about a specific program, my aunt would call like, "Oh, I've heard about this program that you should enroll her in. See if she wants to do this." And so summers were spent, doing vacation Bible school or some program. So it was always something to do. It was never just, "Oh, okay, we're just gonna sit here." Um, travel. We, travel kind of just to see relatives and things like that. So my mom always calls me her wild child after I got older because, I just go everywhere and I'm just this adventurer with wanderlust. And she's like, where did I get you from? Like Joe said, he remembers me from school and how quiet and, like, oh, what, you said something to me? Oh my gosh. And, now I don't know a stranger. My mom called like me and my friends to United Nations because, it's like, you know, friends from different, cultures and countries and things like that, and we all just intermeshed and just got along. And so I guess that kind of shaped me, for later, even though I didn't know it, that, oh, okay, this is how you just, go in and, you make yourself comfortable with people and, kind of sit back and watch. So all that watching, I guess I did as a child, because I was super quiet, that really kind of developed me, into what I am now. So, I'm, just a little touch on the daddy's girl thing, a little bit of a daddy's girl. Okay, a lot of bit of a daddy's girl. But, I spend time with both of them. So, I would, help my dad with the cars and stuff. And so, I know how to fix a lot of things. I had my own tools. He gave me my first sander when I was like 10 or something. So, you know, and then, hanging out with mom, doing more so the kitchen things. And so, and that was for both me and my brother, so they didn't really believe in just having, okay, you're a girl, you have to do this, or you're a boy, you have to do this. So, both of us ironed and did dishes and learned how to cook and, learned how to work on cars and fix things. And, so we were, I think it just made us more well-rounded individuals, really kind of being able to do a lot of stuff that people even now are just like, how do you know how to do that? Or why do you do that?
Mm,
So, and, being single, which I'm, actually enjoying, at this juncture in life, um, it kind of makes you feel not as helpless because you can do a lot of things. It's
mhm,
like, well, okay, with the help of a YouTube video here and there, because hey, YouTube is everything, right? Anytime you need to figure something out, like, now how do I do that? YouTube.
mhm,
So, but
mm,
yeah, childhood, like I say, it was actually decent. We dodged things. We were fortunate that we didn't get involved in the gangs. They're everywhere. In Chicago, even back then. Our school being where it was kind of in the middle of the hood essentially, but my mom and dad basically just had plans for us to, do other things. And I guess when you fill a child with, other things to do, then, idle
mhm.
hands, they don't really have time
Right.
for that, or other people can't get to them. So, people would try to, get to you. And, but my aunts and my mom, they would always encourage us and give us affirmations and tell us that, what we would be and, what we're not. And, don't listen to names, names can't hurt you. And so, it's kind of what I try to do, these days to the younger generation as well, because some of them get so sensitive about, oh, well, they said this to me and they did that, but,
Mm,
it's just not important. You just kind of keep your eye on the prize and just keep
mhm,
plugging on to what you need to do. And, hey, you get there. So,
That's awesome. That's awesome. Good stuff. I
mhm,
mean, for both of you, just I'm just trying to play this out in my mind, just envisioning you going through your childhood and everything, and again, you both come from very solid, close knit family situations, and like you said, it wasn't
mhm,
that there wasn't the presence of adversities around you and challenges, but
mhm,
you were protected and or equipped
yeah,
enough to be able to
mhm,
navigate through that,
yeah,
and that's just that just goes to show the presence of a loving family and parents who are involved in your upbringing and making sure that you were um, stayed on the straight and narrow, so to speak, stayed focused, and also knew that possibilities were endless as far as what you could do with your lives and
mhm,
how impactful you could be in those respective spaces that you would ultimately um, transition into. I did have a quick follow up for you, Kim. Of course, I was teasing you, of course, at the beginning about your shyness and your quietness, and I too experienced a level of that myself. Marsha may not, even believe this, but
What?
when I think about my my turning point, was like literally
Mm,
was coming on college campus. Like I remember my
mm,
mom dropping me off, and her and others who came with her when they left, and I remember walking on campus and just talking to myself, and I was just like, Joe, from now on, if there's something that you're interested in, something that intrigues you, whatever, you're not gonna play this whole shy, scared role anymore. You're just gonna jump right in and explore it and see what it's like, and that was so impactful for me because it totally flipped the script from me and pulled out
Mm,
that person that was inside of
mhm.
me that was capable of doing all of these things. So the next thing I know, I'm in this organization and that organization and this
Yep.
committee and that group and this thing over here
Mhm.
and that over there. And so I was just curious. I'm saying all that to say, and I know that this we probably all have had that. But I wanted to ask you real quick, Kim, knowing that you had a similar background with that in terms of that sort of shy quietness. What was that trigger? What was that turning point where you went from the quiet, shy Kim to boom? I'm getting ready to just let this inner Kim out and just let the
Right?
world see what she has to offer.
Yeah.
What do you recall? What that moment, that turning point was for you?
Hmm. It was really a work in progress because, like I say, mom and aunts and everybody, they were all, trying to pull me out of my shell, probably after maybe the age 11. They're like, okay, you've got to stop being afraid. You've got to, nobody's going to hurt you. And, you can, get out there, you can talk and speak and things like that. But it would probably be college, when I kind of
Mhm.
started coming out of my shell because I did go away to school. I think I started off at Western Illinois University in the middle of downstate Illinois. And just being away from home, that first time and just kind of meeting new people and things like that. That probably was one of my jump off points as well. Like, oh, okay, people are kind of fun. You know, I would probably say it would have been, college. And then after that, just going away someplace all the time, for different summer programs. It kind of, I guess, gave you a level of independence and you know that nobody else can, be your voice when you're away. So you learn to use your
Mhm.
own voice basically, at that point.
Mhm.
So, I was, yeah, definitely 17, or so, when that kind of started to develop and then, just didn't look back. You give me a map, back in the days before MapQuest and GPS and it was just like,
Yeah.
I want to go here. And, my aunts were always like, oh, they just
Mhm.
thought it was amazing. I'm like, who can't read a map? Is that like unusual? But they just thought that was the neatest thing that I would just get a map out and just say, okay, and this is how I'm going to get there and this is what I'm going to do. And so, but yeah,
Mhm.
definitely college and, just the different experiences I had, after that and whatnot. And so, yeah,
Okay. Okay. I was just kind of curious, and even with you, Marsha, I know you
Mhm.
explained earlier in your upbringing about how it's kind of
Mhm.
a work in progress in the sense of you were kind of the more outgoing or whatever. But what was
Mhm.
that turning point for you? Because even as I've followed your life, from of course meeting
Uh-huh.
you in college and then one day seeing on social media that you're in Chicago and in my
Mhm.
mind, to be honest, I never pictured you shifting from Wisconsin to Chicago and just me
Yeah.
knowing what the dynamic of the big city is and but you were there and you were thriving and it was clear that you were because I'm looking at all the pictures and all the stuff that you're
Yeah.
doing. I'm like, this is I mean,
Marsha?
Marsha is like really like so what was that turning point for you? Like, do you
Sure.
recall that triggered you to kind of level up in terms of just letting the world see your personality and all that you had to offer? What was that
You
for you?
know, I think when I went to grad school and
Mhm.
I just being around um just a lot of different people from a lot of different places. And I mean, because of traveling, I started traveling independently at that time, going to New York, visiting people here or there. And I was like, it was always in the back of my mind, I got to get out of Madison. This is too comfortable. This is too, I've outgrown it. It'll always be home. I think I felt a certain, like, oh, my mom and dad want me to stay, but I was just like, no, I got to live my life. And I was going to Chicago all the time, visiting with friends, and I said, you know what? Boom. I don't know if it'll be my forever city, but it's my I need to do it right now city. And I loved it. And I mean, I knew I had friends there, but I wanted to really experience the city through my own lenses and not just their lenses. And so I don't know what it just came on and I
Okay.
was not, and I just did it. And I wanted to live in Hyde Park, and I wanted to do this, that, and the other. I joined a local chapter there in my sorority, and it was just, I just took off. And I think also, too, admittedly, I was like, I really need to up my dating game. I'm not even lying. And I thought, well, let me get out of Madison. Let me be around more people, more black people, more brown people, more other people. And I was just so thirsty for it and ready for the experience. So I threw myself into a lot of different things and a lot of different experiences. So I think it was. I do remember. I do remember when I started grad school. I'm like, okay, after these 2 years, I'm out,
Mm,
and I
mm.
stuck to it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And with both of your stories, it's just a
Hmm.
testament, as even to myself, it's like getting out of our comfort zones.
Hmm.
Exactly.
I think for all three of
Yes.
us, when we made that decision to get out of our comfort zones, it just opened up the world in ways that was beyond our imaginations, doing things that I would have never thought of doing. I mean, even you would ask me, years ago, would I ever someday be doing a podcast or doing some of the other things that I've had a chance to do? No, I wouldn't have never paired that, matched that up because that just wasn't my personality. And like I said, Marsha, you got a chance to see me in college, but I was
Hmm.
literally evolving in college. This
Okay.
wasn't. I
Sure.
didn't just walk in there like that. It was just. It was just like
It
that
just
was a process that I was just
right.
in the very early stages of development. Of course, bumping your head here and there along the way, but nevertheless,
Sure.
just really trying to discover who you
Hmm.
are and what you have to offer to the world, and actually believing in
Hmm.
yourself and having that confidence in yourself. I mean, that was huge for me, and I, like you said, I just never looked back. Just like the two of you just never
Hmm.
looked back, and
Hmm.
that was so relevant, so important to do. So that's
Hmm.
why I just, so I appreciate when I hear others having similar experiences and stories like that. I just like I identify with that because I was there. I'm not going to even front and act
Hmm.
like, oh yeah, I was always full of confidence and believed in myself. And I mean, I knew I was smart. That was the one thing I
Hmm.
knew. I knew my academic game was tight. I was good with
Hmm.
that, but it was
Yes, you were.
everything else. Everything else, I was like, I was a little, a little nervous, a little hesitant, not as,
Hmm.
confident in myself. It was a hit and miss type of thing. So yeah, that's why I wanted to kind of stay on this point a little bit for all three of us because it was powerful, and I'm sure somebody's going to be listening and they're in that similar situation, and
Hmm.
the message here is, hey, you know, let your light shine. Don't be willing to take those chances and those risks, and don't worry about failing. Okay, so if something didn't work out the way you thought it should or that you hoped it would, okay, but at least you won't have the
Hmm.
regret of not ever experiencing or trying it just to see,
Absolutely. That's
so
one of my phrases, no regrets. I want to sit on my
That's
rocking
right.
chair when I'm
mhm,
old and, think about all the adventures and the places that I've
Hmm.
been. But the one thing that I will not say is that, oh, I regret not doing something.
right. So you said no
Hmm.
regrets, and then earlier, Monica, I mean, I say Monica, earlier, Marsha,
That's okay.
you said, no apologies,
That's right.
about, so it's like
Hmm.
no regrets, no apologies. I mean,
Yep.
that's the message. That's what's
Hmm.
important. So that's
Hmm.
good stuff. Good stuff. So, you both have hinted on this, and of course, I've done my research. Obviously, I know just from conversations with you and just looking at what you share, it's been very
Hmm.
evident for quite some time that the two of you have had very close bonds, in particular with your
Hmm.
fathers. And so, I want to kind of explore that situation a little bit more and
Hmm.
ask each of you to just tell us what was just that whole daddy daughter experience like, just whether you're thinking back
Hmm.
from in the early days being a little girl, even into being a grown woman. Tell us what that experience was like, that journey was like with that relationship, and how did that relationship impact decisions and life choices that you made for yourself. So I'll jump back with you, Marsha. Just kind of tell us
Okay.
about that daddy daughter relationship.
Sure. Especially since his passing in 2016, I find myself reflecting on this all the time. And especially when I'm going through times of feeling lonely or just like, dang, I just talk to him. And so it does, I remember first just the actual things we would do and the support that he always gave to me. And the talks of being, don't be fooled by these men out here. You focus, get your education. I remember him being so protective, almost maybe overprotective a little bit. It's okay. We can bump our heads a little bit, but he told us one time when we were a little older that he always wanted to have a family and he wanted to raise daughters in particular, which I thought was interesting because most men, I feel like, want for sure a son, but my dad really wanted girls. And learning a bit about his history and some of the things he had to unfortunately witness in his childhood, it made sense to me why he wanted to almost have girls so he could maybe correct the mistakes that he witnessed in the past, if you will. And so he was just always he raised us to be mindful of how we are presenting ourselves to people, to be honest, to be humble, um, and but I just always remember just he would just play tag in the house and just make us feel so special, I guess. And just watching how he cared for us, my mom, my sister, and myself, like he clearly was the man of the house. He went shopping with us, okay? He loved to go to the mall with us. He loved the idea of, okay, well, I'll hold your bags, and he'd read a book, and he just always having that man around, just always protecting us, even in our leisure time of going to the mall, right? Rooting us, always going to rooting us on at games, dance recitals, just always wanting to be present and never ever felt like he assigned us to this is just what little girls do. He really wanted us to explore, but but under his cautious eye though at the same time. So I always feel like I had one of my a really good friend of mine who's very similar to my dad. I will say when I watch him with his kids, and he said, I'm just worried as my daughters are starting to date, am I ruining them? And I'm like, what do you mean by that? He goes, I know how protective I am. And he rattled off a lot of the things that he does that my dad did for us. And he said, am I setting the bar too high? And he didn't mean it in an egotistical way, but I kind of did think about that. And I think, I don't think there's such a thing as too high, but I think I'm so blessed to have had that example of if you're going to make a choice and be a partner with someone, this is you want somebody who shows you love like this. This is what it looks like. So I always felt very loved. I always felt very protected. I always felt very provided for. And and so I guess I keep thinking about those things and just like the feeling of security um, is so palpable, and I can still feel it, now when I think about it. Um, I think it has informed my choices. I think that you were saying it has informed my choices when I do look for partners. I mean, and I've had a lot of one date wonders. Let me tell you, there's just I've learned early on not to, just some stuff that's just like, okay, I'm not even going to entertain this. I have entertained other things sometimes a little bit longer than I should, but I can tell you he's always in the back of my mind, like, all right, is this just for like now and then we'll hang out, or is this potentially somebody I would bring home to my dad? And so I've only brought in my time, I only brought three men home um, for them to meet my dad. So to me, it was just kind of like I knew not to bring no mess to the house, if you will, right? So, and I'm grateful for that. And I just remember one time that was a very humbling experience. I was in Chicago, and my dad, I'm not lying, he called me every single day. And I was just with some friends at brunch once, and I was like, oh, dad, I feel like I'm just dating my dad. He calls me all the time. And just kind of like, how you just brush it off, okay, I'll call him back, whatever. And one of my friends said, I wish I had a dad who would call me every day. And at I can still feel how that hit me so hard. And I'm so grateful she said that. Um, because it helped me again to bring things into perspective of the type of man he was, and was forever be in my heart as my dad. And so I'm very grateful for my relationship with him. I know I could go on in a million different directions, but and he wasn't perfect. Not at all. Not at all. And I'm grateful that he shared some mistakes that he made in his life, and how he either recovered or didn't recover and has regrets, and how I've learned through that, through some of his regrets, and that kind of informed me on what to be mindful of. So
And that's
that's a
awesome
little bit
that
about
you,
him.
yes, yes. I mean, it sounds like a wonderful father daughter relationship. And I
Hmm.
like even at the tail end that you said that he even shared mistakes, because I think as a
Hmm.
father, especially when you're a father who has a close relationship with your daughter, there's that part of you that never wants to disappoint. never wants to let them
Mm-hmm.
down. And so, even as a father of a daughter myself, that's constantly something that anytime I make a mistake, whether she personally witnessed it or has no idea that it happened, it's just, I'm just like, wow. Sometimes you can beat yourself up about it. Like, should
Sure.
this be something that you share, or if nothing more, it convicts you to say, you know what, you can't do this, you can't think this, you can't say this, because I
Mm-hmm.
just never want, like I said, to be a disappointment, and just the fact that I understand that a lot of times in that father daughter dynamic, especially when it's a close bond, that as you stated, you are basically your daughter's first love, and she perhaps
Mm-hmm.
models the selection of men after you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so of course I'm obviously wanting to set as great of an example as possible, because I surely, when I can tell you a lot of good things about me, but I can tell you some ugly stuff about me too, and I surely don't
Mm-hmm.
want her to meet a guy that has the ugly side. I want her to meet all the
Mm-hmm.
good stuff. you know
Right.
um you
Right.
know so that's a beautiful story
Mm-hmm.
that you have about your dad. So I want to ask you, and again, share whatever
Yes.
you feel comfortable in sharing.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned to me earlier that, of course, you made the transition back to Madison, and
Mm-hmm.
much of that decision had to do with the health of your parents, and it started with
Mm-hmm.
your dad's health.
Yes.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about when that decision, what that process was for you in making that decision,
Mm.
um, and just what that experience was just like to see the person that was he was your Superman. He was
Mm-hmm.
always able to do stuff, and now
Mm-hmm.
you saw him in a vulnerable state that would
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, bring an end to his life.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of walk us through that, and how that impacted you, and how you were able to even
Mm-hmm.
process it all, considering how close you were.
Sure. Sure. My dad's very stubborn. Let's just keep that in mind. He was very
Hmm.
stubborn. So he had Parkinson's disease, and when the onset, I think they were starting to do some testing. Well, yeah, they're starting to treat some of his conditions. He didn't have the tremors, but he had vascular. So it was more, sometimes he would have these, like, his brain would just freeze and he couldn't talk for like a couple minutes. Or sometimes he was noticing his balance was always off. So they started treating him as if he had Parkinson's to see how he would respond. So, going through that, I kind of knew like, oh, this might be something, but he still was, driving and active and all these things. But I think when he physically started to really decline, that was just but yet being so stubborn and trying to get help. So then I found myself going through periods of anger towards him that, well, if you could do this and this would maybe help you more, thus helping you more would make us feel better, right? Or to maybe help you to feel better. And so he was just, whether it being doing his exercises or taking his medicine as he should and all this and that, or even starting to look at maybe you guys should sell the house, downsize, get assisted living. He was just he wouldn't even entertain conversations. So there's periods of frustration and anger that I had never had towards him and I was trying to navigate that in Chicago. And I found myself going home for weekends, seeing what's going on, helping my mom because my mom was in agreement. He's not doing this. And so it was just, I went through periods of frustration and anger. And then it dawned on me, when I was in my moments of prayer, that it came over me that he does not know this new role. He's at this point 73, 74. This is the first time in his life that he can't do what he wants to do. He can't do what he thinks he should do. So imagine this. He's not being stubborn to be difficult. He is. I could start to see his innocence in it. He was scared. He was vulnerable. I'm the provider. I'm the protector. But I can't do that to the capacity I want to do anymore. So when I started looking at it through that way, the anger went away. And I looked at opportunities. Well, how can I help in a way that he would be willing to receive it? So I just, and starting to talk to more people. Um, and so when he finally got to the point where he can no longer live in the house, he couldn't climb the stairs, he couldn't walk anymore. And then my mom had onset dementia at that point. That really, it was not even. should I go home or should I not? It was just conviction was struck, and I just went home and I said, I'll figure it out. I'll figure everything out. And I'm so grateful that I did. I may kind of grimace that I'm back in Madison, but I wouldn't have. It was a no brainer for me. I knew where I needed to be. And I'm grateful that I was able to spend the last 2 years of his life that, even though he, of course, he just wasn't always present and always around, but just to sometimes just go and hold his hand and to be there when he passed was beautiful. And I just remember just whispering, I'll take care of mom. Just, it's okay to go. Like, give him that permission. Thank
Hmm.
you. It's okay to go. We'll be good. And
Wow.
yeah, it was, I think I'm still processing it, to be honest, because even though that was what, 7 years ago now, I was also the one taking care of business of mom and taking care of the business side of things that I think the pandemic allowed me more space to grieve and to properly grieve, as I define it for myself. So, but I still talk to him every day. I know he's around.
That's awesome, and again, I appreciate your transparency. I know that,
Hmm.
that's a difficult conversation to have, but
Hmm.
um, it speaks volumes to you to just take on that role of, and this is what happens when you have aging parents. The roles switch
Hmm.
where you become the
Hmm.
parent and they become the child, and they're not
Hmm.
always, like you said, they're not always agreeable. They're not always,
Hmm.
they're kind of getting it set in their ways, but you understand when you're in this situation, you understand that really it was just about, like I said, the clinging to independence. He was just used to being a certain kind of way, and it was just hard to let that go, even though
Hmm.
he probably knew that he should. It was just
Right.
it was just hard,
Right.
and until you're in that situation, it's real easy to be judgmental about that. But for you
Hmm.
to transition from that anger away
Hmm.
from it, and just say, you know what, I'm gonna just be there for him, and then to just
Hmm.
change your life setting,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of kids, even the adult
Hmm.
versions of them who would not have
Hmm.
done that. They were like, I'm not changing my life up. I'm not doing this, that, or the other.
Hmm.
I mean, they're just gonna have to go in a home, or they're just gonna have to. There's some folks who neglect their
Oh
parents and
yeah.
forget that there was once upon a time when they were the dependent
Hmm.
and needing that care and covering. So for you to do that, that
Hmm.
just speaks to just the inner core of who you are as an individual. And
Hmm.
so that just levels up an already high respect I already have for you, to know that you went through that. Anybody who's had to go through a caregiving process, I've
Hmm.
had experiences in caregiving, and just to watch a loved one die, that whole process, it can
Hmm.
be grueling, it can be stressful, it can be very
Hmm.
overwhelming. And even after the event happens, like as you said, you're still processing.
Oh sure.
It takes a
Hmm.
while to just get through that, and don't ever let anybody tell
Hmm.
you that you've grieved long enough, or that you should be
Right.
over it, because that could be so far from the truth.
That's right.
You may deal with it a little bit better as the time goes on, but you don't
Hmm.
have to forget it or act like it never existed,
Hmm.
or get over it, as some people like to try to say. So
That's right.
very,
Thank you
very
for saying that.
powerful,
That's true.
very powerful.
Thank you.
Same question for you, Kimberly. Tell us, daddy daughter relationship. You shared a little bit, about that, but just kind of go into a little bit more what that whole experience was like, both as a kid and even into adulthood.
Hmm.
That whole experience of the father daughter relationship for you, and how that has impacted decisions that you've made in
Hmm. Yeah, where do I start? So just like Marsha, we have so many stories, about growing up with, this man that, probably a lot of people have a hard time measuring up to. I know when I was young and I never really knew what she meant, but one of my grandmothers said, she told my dad, she was like, yeah, she's gonna have a hard time finding, a husband or something. You kind of, she's gonna compare, people, to you. And I'm like, what does that mean? What? Oh, wow, I'm gonna get married one day and all of that. But of course, as you, go along in life, and I don't really say that I want, somebody like my dad, but maybe I do, kind of how selfless he was. Like, say, you're getting ready to, go someplace, and my dad was always the type, do you have money? And even if I said yeah, he was still like making sure I had money, because he wanted to make sure that when I went out that I wasn't gonna, have to compromise myself for a meal or, like, oh, if he takes you here, he wanted me to be prepared to pay for my own basically. So, he's a big part of my independent streak, I think because he always wanted to make sure that when he wasn't there, that I was able to, take care of myself, and he would say, well, I know how men are. I know how men can be, so, I'm just making sure that, you have what you need. So, but, starting from, a kid, we had a neighbor, whenever she said that whenever my dad left, the house, she knew she just had to wait a few seconds and she would see me behind him, like, following him, getting ready to ride shotgun or whatever. But she used to call me Mr. Shields' shadow. It's like, oh, there goes Mr. Shields. Where's Kim? And she'd be looking for me because she know I was going to be trotting behind him pretty soon. So, he's always just been ever present. And, when you're young, you don't realize what a blessing I guess it is to have, you know, two parents, both mom and dad who, kind of always are there and things like that. You don't appreciate it. I didn't appreciate it as much, as a child, but as, I became a teenager and young adult, I definitely appreciated, what they were, what they sacrificed and all of that. And like a lot of my cousins call my dad my biggest cheerleader, when I went to dental school and we had our first business cards that said student doctor, I just gave him a couple. He asked me to give him a couple. I'm like, okay. And so some of his friends, after he passed, they were like, your dad was so proud of you. He had those cards and he would flash out that card every chance he could get or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, my girl is is in dental school and she's gonna be a doctor and all of that. So he would tell everybody, whip out my picture after I graduated and all of that. So yeah, he definitely, you know, I can definitely say he was, proud of me, even though, I was still, struggling to make him proud, I guess. But, he
Mm-hmm.
definitely, instilled a lot of determination, in us. This never give up, kind of spirit. So, no matter what, he was like, well, just hold on, things will get better. Don't give up before your blessing. And that has definitely been very true, in my life and what we've seen and what, you see with other people sometimes, sometimes people can get so down and, they give up before their blessing actually comes in. And it's like, oh, if you just held on for just a little bit longer, you know, you would probably, realize the blessing that you have been struggling to get to and did not, get an opportunity to achieve. So it's interesting though. But, me and my brother, we always say that, we got the best parts of my dad and the best parts of my mom. My dad, he had an impeccable sense of direction. We could go to any town. And of course, like I say, this is like, 70s and 80s. This is before MapQuest and everything. And, it's just like, how did he know how to get to these places or whatever? He's never been. He just had this internal compass. So me and my brother kind of inherited that. Thankfully, not from my mom, because my mom, yeah, she would tell you her sense of direction was horrible. So, yeah, working with our hands, we got that from our dad. You know, I guess when you grow up and, he's handing you a wrench. Okay, what is this? Is this the monkey wrench? Is this so you kind of learn things and, he makes you do. And so you get that dexterity and things like that, kind of early. So that's probably a big portion of why I chose dentistry over, other career fields that I was thinking
Mm-hmm.
about. So, I mean, and just like I heard you say, Marcia, as well, how your
Mm-hmm.
dad would call you every day. My dad in his, later years, would call, every day.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes I'll be like, okay, now I just talked to you, like, because me and my mom, she would, I would talk to her like, twice a week, three times a week or something like that. And that was fine. My dad, he would call and then he would say, you want to talk to your mom after we were finished? And I was like, nah, and she would be like, nah, I just talked to her. We're good. So, but that still didn't stop him. So I said, I'm glad he,
Mm-hmm.
he did, do that. Cause I really, you miss it, but, hey, it is what it is essentially.
Mm-hmm.
He really, kind kind of shaped, who we were. And, like I say, my uncles, they kind of picked up a little bit on that. Every time I see like his brothers, they'll tell me stories about my dad. And, sometimes it's things that I don't even know. And I'm like, oh, dad never told me that. Or, so it's always neat trying, getting that little behind the scenes sneak preview, like, oh, so is
Mm-hmm.
that what he did? Okay. So that's always kind of nice, especially after losing him, if you just kind of want
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, that essence, okay, well, let me pick up the phone and call my uncle, or let me
Yeah.
text, this uncle and talk for a little bit. So, but yeah, he's still present. I'll still be
Mm-hmm.
driving sometimes, and just kind of because he's the one who taught me how to drive and all the rules of the road and all of that. When
Mm-hmm.
he used to drive a truck when we were younger, and back in the olden days, you could actually ride in the truck and stuff. As a child.
Mm-hmm.
This was, of course, seatbelt laws did not exist in anything back in the day, and so that was kind of neat seeing the rules of the road and things that he would always, okay, now you don't travel in the left lane, that's just for passing. So that was instilled like probably when I was like 6, so it's still, a
Hmm.
lot of the things now, we still refer back, um back to him, essentially. But gone but not forgotten. I still feel
Right.
like he's, here sometimes. You still hear that voice, very occasionally. I'll still have, dreams. I don't know if you or Joe, Marcia, ever kind of have
Yep.
dreams about your parent, and they can
Hmm.
feel so real sometimes, when they're just
Mm-hmm.
like they're just there. And sometimes I look forward to, sleep because I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get to see, my
Mm-hmm.
dad, or maybe I'll get to see mom, or, it's just, just that feeling when you wake up and you're like, oh, they were there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And what you just spoke of is that's an example of a what I would refer to as a blessings in the streets moment, where it, like I said,
Yes.
whether it happened in a dream or it could
Mm-hmm.
be a song that comes on, it could be a bird in a tree, it could be just something that is a natural part of the day, but
Mm-hmm.
it hits different for you. You know that
yep.
no, this isn't just some random bird. This isn't just
That's
some
right.
random hearing of a song, and you instantly know, and
Hmm.
it's like,
It's
hey
them.
dad, hey mom,
Yep.
whatever that, it's just, just as we, of course, we're talking about, dad daughter relationship, but of course, same thing had happened with mother son, and so that what it was for
Oh,
me
okay.
on my
Yes.
end, and so yeah, those random instances, those messaging things that you remember about, in my case, what my mom said or how she would have responded, and just you just feel it. It's just a different feeling, but
Mm-hmm.
it's them. It's of them. It's that
Right.
essence
Mm-hmm.
of them. So yeah, I totally relate to that. So
Mm-hmm.
that's good stuff. And again, just powerful relationship, testament of that father daughter relationship. And again, for those who have the opportunity to listen, if there's dads out there who, even if you don't have a relationship with the mom anymore, it's so important to still be in that for those who have daughters, what really for daughters and sons, but since we're speaking about daughters, be in that daughter's life anyway, just
Yes.
because of the impact and the significance. Because I've had an opportunity to interview a multitude of ladies on the podcast, and who did not have that father daughter bond that you two have spoken of, and most of them have said that it has impacted them in a negative way,
Mm-hmm.
that absence and the decisions that they made. So what you're saying has all the truth in it that needs to be spoken about, because it does make a difference when that dad is not
Mm-hmm.
actively present. I've
Yes.
even had guests who said even when the dad has been giving money, yeah, it was cool that maybe he gave money, but it wasn't the same because the relationship wasn't
Exactly.
there. So yeah, so that relationship does in fact matter. So
Mm-hmm.
um, when the two of you are going through challenging times, again, whether it's something really big and major, or whether it be even if it's something just kind of minor, um, I'm interested in knowing what is it that you tend to lean into as far as your sort of your routine, your process as you handle adversity. What works for you when you find yourself in such moments? And I'll start with you, Marsha. Just kind of tell us,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a little bit of what you tend to do when you're faced with that. Okay, I got to deal with this. How do you go through dealing with this? What is your process?
Yeah, I think there's I'm not a Gemini, but I feel like I operate in two different two different ways. I mean, I find myself going into the head part as far as just what's at hand, what do I need? Let me reach out for help, which is not always easy for me to do, but I try to get what's at hand. But sometimes I get overwhelmed by that, and I do lean into my faith and my relationship with God. And I really just, I mean, again, learn from my mom and dad. Sometimes if you just don't even have the energy, all you have to say is, God, I'm here and I'm going through it. And that is, that's very, I mean, it's just the first thing I do, or maybe even the second thing before I get the business out of the way, right? Try to tackle it. But I really do. I lean on God. And I try to surround my living space or whatever space I'm in at that moment with things that are, music is very healing for me. Um, just listening to encouraging. I don't, and I know the people in my life to go to who are going to meet me where I'm at and help lift me back up. I don't like to sit and complain or be, you know what I mean? Just like that round and round and just it festers and festers. I really try to seek peace, with who I surround myself with. But it really does start with with praying at any moment and talking with God. I do find myself, especially lately, with some things going on with my mom as she's in her latter stages. And I'll just feel like that child that, when you're faced with these diseases that you can't do anything about it, right?
Hmm.
And I just say, Dad, okay, Dad, I know you're here. Help me. I call another, my grandmother. I really do call on God and my elders who have gone before me. It really does. And I know now, just wait a little bit. You'll start to, the problem may not be resolved, but the anxiety and stress that the problem brings on is manageable again.
Hmm. And I think that's very important. What you said, when you ask for help, when you release, and particularly release it over to God,
Hmm.
what you're basically saying is I trust you, and I understand that every weight, every burden is not for me to be lifting anyway. So when I'm going
Mm,
through, the best way for me to, like you said, to be freed of that anxiety, be freed of that worry,
hmm.
is just turn it over, turn it over to
Hmm.
Him. I mean, I don't know how it's going to play out. I don't know what's going to happen or what I'm supposed to do, but I'm trusting that you will, guide me through accordingly. And then, like you said, leaning on, you know, people that have your best interest at heart, and know that
Hmm.
they'll meet you where you are.
Hmm.
That's critical too, having that appropriate circle around you. So I love that.
Hmm.
That's very necessary for you to process difficult and challenging times. So I appreciate you sharing
Hmm.
that. Same
Hmm.
question for you, Kimberly. How do you process the difficult moments, the challenging times? What's your method of going through such things?
Um, well, definitely prayer. We had a strong sense of, faith and all of that. And so that's definitely the number one go to, meditation. Sometimes I just have to
Hmm.
remove myself from the situation and, just find that quiet, to kind of get clarity, things like that. I've got a pretty, very good network of friends and family, that I can kind of call on. So, if it's work related, I've got a, um, series of colleagues that I can, call and say, man, just having trouble with this case, or this is just so difficult, or dealing with a difficult patient, or anything like that. And they always have a word of encouragement, some advice. Same with family, just dealing with aging parents and aging relatives, and trying to do what's best for them, to make sure that they're safe and all of that. So definitely, I enjoy, even though I only have one sibling. My brother is 5 years older, and we weren't
Hmm.
the closest as we were, children, but as we got older, we definitely became a lot closer. And so I can, kind of draw on, different areas, but self care is definitely key, sometimes, because sometimes you just have to kind of have the space around you, to kind of have that zen in order to, kind of get that mental clarity, and
Mhm.
whatnot sometimes. And then, and then sometimes writing things down, that kind of makes things clearer for me sometimes, just kind of
Mhm.
jotting down a pros and cons list, or, just kind of working through an outline of the steps that I want to do to solve whatever problem, that I have. So,
Mhm.
yeah, sometimes you might feel like just, giving up and throwing in the towel, and, and everybody's allowed that, but you just can't stay in that space,
Mhm.
you know,
Hmm.
Mhm.
after you, kind of have your pity party, you got, okay, well, let's get up. Nobody else is going to solve this problem for me. So, let me get
Right.
up and figure out, okay, what's next. So,
Right.
you know,
Right.
I draw on different avenues as well to, kind of get through tough situations, which, hey, anytime it's really quiet in life, I always tell people to enjoy that space, because something's usually coming, down the
Hmm.
pipeline and stuff. So,
Hmm.
enjoy the quiet. I mean, bored is
Mhm.
never a term I ever use, because it's,
Mhm.
I like that. I have a
Right.
saying that I say shalom in the home, or peace in the home. When I come out from the crazy, mad world, it's just nice to come into your home and, just have peace and to have quiet. And if
Mhm.
you had peace and quiet before, you can really appreciate that. Especially if you
Mhm.
haven't had it before, you can really appreciate it. So,
Mhm.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you share some powerful points here where you talked
Yeah.
about that self-care, because that's an ongoing thing. I mean, it's important to
yeah,
Mhm.
understand that we don't wait until the storm has arrived before we
exactly.
start prepping ourselves to be, ready for it. At that point it's too late.
Yeah,
It's an ongoing process of self-care. It's an ongoing process of being of the mindset that when that storm does hit, it's okay for you to still have that initial emotional response, but that I don't stay stuck there, that I
right.
don't waddle in this,
Yes.
oh, woe is me, oh,
Exactly.
because that's when we put ourselves at greater risk of being defeated and not feeling like we have any pathway to overcome or break through.
Right.
And that's not a space that you want to be in, because that's when
Right.
the fear and the worry and the
Mhm.
stress and the depression and all the other negative energies enter into our
Mhm.
existence, and make what might otherwise be just a basic problem, we now exacerbate it into something significantly more, just because we allowed all this other stuff in, instead of just taking the time to just pause. Let me just catch my breath. Let me just calm down and let me think through it. Let me process, whether it's writing down, like you stated, or,
Hmm.
or just kind of thinking it through. What's my next plan? Just kind of figuring out. And of course,
Mhm.
understanding that you don't have to do this alone. That's what God is there
Right.
for, to be with you, even when you don't feel like nobody else is.
Yes.
His presence is still there, and He can navigate you through that particular storm of life. So that's
Mhm.
awesome. That's awesome. Marsha, if you had a chance to talk to the younger version of Marsha, when you think back on all the stuff that you've been through, encountered, experienced,
Mhm.
what would you say to her or somebody like her, to be of encouragement, that you think, if I
Mhm.
knew then what I know now, what would be those words of encouragement that you would share with her that would help her to be able to better, not so much have a problem free life, because there's really
Mhm.
no such thing, but to be able to
No.
better navigate the life
Mhm.
accordingly as it progresses along? What would you say to
Mhm.
her?
Well, I think just the latter part of what you said, I would say that, you know, um, problems are not, they're opportunities to learn more. And that when you make a mistake, it doesn't define you. So what? Sometimes you got to look at things on the big map. Maybe this is just one blip. It's really okay. Um, that you don't have to have all the answers, and nobody's going to think less of you if you don't know what to do. Ask for help, and ask for help more, because self-soothing and ramping yourself up, it gets exhausting. it
Yeah.
gets it's very exhausting. So reach out, ask for help. Um, I would say it's also too. I know they're a significant part of my life. Probably up until I moved to Chicago, I played it safe. I played it safe, and I made decisions that, I mean, you want your parents' approval, but at some point you really got to live for you, because they may not approve, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. That's just maybe their disapproval, but maybe it means that it's just not a choice they would have made for themselves. And so there are certain situations that I kind of, I try not to live with regret, but I wish I would have maybe went left and not right, if you
Hmm.
know what I'm saying. So I think
Yes.
is having a healthy disregard for, okay, what people might think of your choices. If you can live with them and go to sleep at night, go for it. um, so I would definitely say that, and I would say, um, I don't know, I would just say, just don't make certain things always about you. Remember, people are bringing their experiences, their insecurities, their whatever, and they may place it on you, but you don't have to receive it. You can
Hmm.
leave it where it's at and not take that in and start owning it and fixing it. It's not yours to fix. So I think that would be the biggest thing.
All right. Well, you poked a couple of scabs on me about don't make it all about you. Don't 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 play it safe.
Hmm.
Those are all powerful, important messages because we can't get caught up in that playing it too safe.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean go to the extreme of being reckless, but
Right,
don't play
right.
things so safe trying to fix the outcome, or
Hmm.
trying to appease other
Yes.
people or worrying about what other people think. I think what you
Hmm.
said, if you can live with it, if it doesn't go well, then that should be all
That
that
matters.
matters. If
Yep.
you're good with it,
Hmm.
not what everybody else thinks, because you get caught up with everybody else thinks and what they feel is best for you, even if they have good intentions behind it. Then now you're living you're allowing them to live their lives through you versus you
Right.
living that life for yourself.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's very good stuff that you shared there to the
Hmm.
younger Marsha or younger
Right.
Marshas of the world out there
Right.
that might be in that very
Right.
stuck mindset right now that they need to
Hmm.
break out of. So thanks for sharing
Hmm.
that. Kimberly, same
You're
thing.
welcome.
What would you tell the young, shy, quiet Kim that
Mm.
was in her shell but has so much wonderful insight and greatness within? What would you say to her that now that you know what you know, that would be of encouragement and that would make her path or others like her a lot more easy to navigate and again, no guarantees of problem-free life, of course, but just being able to just have more experiences and more opportunities to enjoy in life. What would you share with the younger version of you?
Let's see. I would tell my younger version, what I do now is to go with the flow, be spontaneous. Yeah, you can plan and have things laid out, but be prepared to deviate from that plan. As my mom used to always say, roll with the punches. Because as we all
Hmm.
know, the best laid plans, life always likes to throw us those curveballs and whatnot. So you just
Hmm.
have to be able to be flexible, to deal with those curveballs and kind of, make a new plan and realize that it's okay if it's different from the original plan, that
Hmm.
that's
Right.
fine. Failure. I think, that would be something I would tell, because I think everybody's afraid to lose, everybody's afraid to fail. But of course, I found that you learn the most from failure. The lessons that you can learn, but you just can't give up
Hmm.
after that failure. Some of the best breakthroughs that I think that people can have, come after, one failure, two failures, three failures. But the person who can actually pick themselves up and regroup, and okay, well, hey, let's start again. That's that strong person. And that's what I would tell my younger self. Hey, be prepared, for these changes because life, definitely isn't fair
That's
by
right.
any means. So, one of my other things that my mom used to say, we would say that we can't do something, she would always say, take that T out of can't. She said you can do it. Don't
Hmm.
think that, something is impossible. Which is kind of weird though, because, when I go to all these different countries and places and whatnot, and, you know, after the fact, I'll kind of think about it and say, ooh, I should have been kind of apprehensive or scared or whatever, but, but I
Hmm.
wasn't, just kind of being able to kind of go in the situation boldly and just enjoying the moment and whatnot. And
Hmm.
then after the fact, you're like, oh, I did that. Wow. Okay.
Hmm.
So it's nothing to be afraid of. Just go, enjoy the experience and, the spontaneity. Getting lost, is nothing wrong with getting lost because you find some of the most hidden treasures, sometimes that you would not have seen.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise. And then one big thing that, my mom used to always say, after I kind of opened up out of my shell and I was always, kind of surrounded by people and friends and things like that. And, she would actually try to encourage me to, okay, well, it's okay to, do something by yourself and not always have the group, to hang out with and all of that. And I agree with that, especially like in
Mm-hmm.
travel. So I was in Greece for the beginning of July. And, some of my trips I do solo and some trips I do with people. And so some people always get the question of, oh my gosh, why would you go by yourself? I mean, you went so far and you went halfway around the world and you didn't go with anybody. You didn't get lonely. And I'm like, lonely? I don't really meet strangers. I mean, I meet some of the
Mm-hmm.
most amazing people on my trips. And, I can't say that I would meet those people if I was in a group or,
Hmm.
with other people. I probably wouldn't even encounter these people. But, um, you know, sometimes people, they see, oh, she's approachable. She's by herself. Let's invite her over or let me start talking to her. Or they just really want to, people are curious, like, oh, you came by yourself. And, so they just really want to know your story too. So, just kind of, be comfortable enough with yourself to, be able to get out and explore solo because, yeah, it's nice to be with friends, but it is so nice with the people and the connections that you can make, when you are by yourself. So,
Mm-hmm.
That's
so a
awesome.
lot of things I would
Mm-hmm.
tell. If only I could just turn back time. Oh my God.
Right.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah, I think we all would love to be able to turn back some time.
Right?
But and it's real easy, like I said, and again, this is more about the words of encouragement than it is even reversing the experiences because I don't think that
Sure.
it's necessary to reverse what happened. It's as much as it's um, having a different mindset of how you handle it.
Hmm.
Like you could go through
Mm-hmm.
all of the same stuff, but maybe you think about it differently.
A different,
The
exactly.
approach is different, but you still go through it because it was necessary for you to still go through those experiences. They had to
Right.
happen to shape and mold you into being what you are. It's just that certain things that perhaps we were faced with over time, we made more difficult than it had to be.
Hmm.
We made it more
Mm-hmm.
trying than it had to be instead of just taking that experience and drawing out of it what we were supposed to get out of it to shape, to mold, to prune, to
Mm-hmm.
sharpen us in a way to level us up to that next point in life that God had for us to navigate on. So yeah, so I
Mm-hmm.
always say that yeah, I would have just as I asked you to, I would always have some things that I would tell my younger self to do differently in terms of, but it would be all about the approach, not so much I wish these experiences didn't happen. No, the experiences shaped and made me what I am, and I'm glad I had them. I count the difficult times as well as the good times. I count it all joy. I needed
Mm-hmm.
all of that to be where I'm at, where at today. So thank you for sharing that. So before I let
Mm-hmm.
you ladies go, I appreciate you being on with me today. I would like to take this opportunity to celebrate you. If there's anything that you got exciting going on, any big projects, plans, or just
Mm-hmm.
adventures or what have you, I would
Mm-hmm.
like for you to share that at this time. So, Marcia, just tell us anything exciting coming up for Marcia in the midst of something that we could celebrate.
Yes. Well, a couple things. I'm going to go back a few months. March, I turned 50. And I
Mhm.
had been, let me tell you, I don't know. I think I had in my mind I was going to be in a certain way in my life. Like I would be married or I would have kids and all these things that we sometimes set ourselves up for. And I'm rounding the corner to 50. I'm like, oh my gosh, how did this come up? And I don't have that family that I wanted to have or whatever. And so I just remember talking to some of my good friends that are older than me, and they just said, no, you just wait till there's something about when you just embrace it. And I have. And I love being 50. I love the way I feel. I love the way I feel about myself. Um, and I had a phenomenal surprise. I had friends from across the country come and celebrate me, and we looked around the room. We talked about just what everybody meant to me, and they just said the way they all interacted. They said, "This is a reflection of who you are," And it was just such a beautiful gift to hear these words. And I don't know, I'm just feeling I love being 50. That's all I can say. So I think that I'm celebrating that every day. And then the last thing that's tangible, I'm going to Australia in November.
Wow.
So I'm going for 3 weeks. I'm going with a couple friends, and I can't wait.
That is
So we're ready
awesome.
to celebrate. I'm ready to really celebrate. So I'm trying to live my best life.
Yep.
There you go.
There
There you
you
go.
go.
That is awesome. And again,
Hmm.
I like your attitude and approach of being 50. Of course, all I still see is 18. I'm sorry, I just
Oh,
still
thank
see
you, and
18.
I'll take that
I
too.
still, I still got pictures to prove it. So
I
I
know.
just see 18.
They don't
But
change.
but yeah, I like the fact that
Hmm.
you're embracing getting older. It's not something you dread, but that you're celebrating and you're
Hmm.
enjoying,
Hmm.
and the space and the places you feel that you're in right now. You can just
Hmm.
feel that energy is exuding over virtually
Oh,
over the
good.
as you
Hmm.
stated that. And so I think it's important for people to, as they age, to not look at it as a death sentence or like, oh, I'm getting old. Oh, no,
Right.
it should get wonderful. That's, like they say,
Hmm.
fine wine ages. We should
That's
age
right.
gracefully and
That's right.
wonderfully, and you're getting ready to embark on an extended, trip to Australia. I
Hmm.
mean, I would love to travel like that. I look forward to being
Hmm.
able to do that someday. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
so that's wonderful. See the world, do life, and be all
Hmm.
that you can, experience and enjoy. So that's wonderful.
Hmm.
And yeah, and that's definitely worthy of celebrating. So,
Hey, hey,
best
thank you.
best to you and that trip, and of course we looking forward to all the pictures and stuff online that you post and rubbing
Yes.
it all into us
Hmm.
who's
Oh
stuck
no,
here. No, I'm just messing with you,
no.
but no,
You can do
yeah,
it too.
that's exciting. How about
Hmm.
you, Kim? I know you are again. You're an adventurer, but what exciting things that you have coming up or going on right now that you'd like to share?
Hmm.
Hmm. Well, I wouldn't call anything exciting, quite yet at this point. I'm still in the planning stage, kind of planning for this next
Okay.
phase in life and, trying to work smarter and not harder and trying to kind of get to the point where I'm, you know, have a 2 day or 3 day work week versus the 5 day, rat race that I am
Hmm.
still indulging myself in. So,
Hmm.
in the meantime, though, I'm just out here trying to experience life and, travel and see the world and meet new people. Just kind of the usual. Um,
Hmm.
while I, enjoy dentistry, I don't necessarily plan on doing it for, you know, until I retire. Like I
Hmm.
say, I do want to, eventually get into something less hands-on and, kind of make your money work for you versus,
Yeah.
you working for the money all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, though,
Hmm.
like I say, I do my best thinking, on a beach, looking at the ocean. So, definitely trips are definitely necessary to,
Hmm.
work things out mentally and things like that. So, probably end of the year, I've always wanted to see the Northern Lights in person. So, I
Oh.
decided Iceland would be that place, to go,
Wow.
to do that because it's just a 6 hour
Yes.
nonstop flight from here in DC. So I'm like, that'll work.
Mm.
Okay.
So,
Nice.
yeah, so that'll be my next bigger trip for probably this year. Little small things, just kind of
Mm.
get away for peace of mind and things like that. They count because they're necessary to kind of make it through the week sometimes. Knowing that you're looking
Hmm.
forward to something to get away to, but overall though, I don't necessarily have anything big in the works.
Hmm.
Currently. Um,
Okay.
Well, I think we can say I don't have nothing big in the works. It's just Iceland trip, at the end of the year, and just a regular, just a 6 hour flight, So I'm just gonna go hang out in
Right.
Iceland and check
Right.
out the Northern Lights, But
Right.
but no, that's wonderful though that and I mean the two of you are like inspiring me, like because I don't travel enough. I
Hmm.
haven't explored like that the way that I would desire to, and as you stated with your career, a lot of that has to do with just the work life. You get so caught up in
Yeah.
the rat race of the 9 to 5 and the doing of all of that sometimes you don't put enough into that self-care and that enjoyment of life. And that's something that I can be transparent about and say, it's a work in progress that I want to do
Yes.
for myself and
Yeah.
for family
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of thing. So that's inspiring to hear the two of you talk about that and that you don't even speak of it like as if it's I guess a special adventure per se. Like this is just part of what we do. This is just the
Right.
next up. And it has nothing to do
You
with
got a
being.
point. You got
Yeah,
a point.
Right.
but that's a
Right.
beautiful place to be in because it's not even
Mm-hmm.
about I'm doing it because I'm filthy rich or anything like that. It's just you've just made
Mm-mm.
it a priority, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the takeaway from that. And it's obvious that
Mm-hmm.
hey, this is just a priority of it's just a part of my self care. That hey, yep, got a
Yeah.
trip coming up. Yep, and this one's gonna be in Australia. This one's gonna be in Iceland, and maybe next year it might be in Greece or Rome and somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just
Right.
doing
Right.
that's a beautiful space to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And so that speaks volumes. So I don't take it lightly, and I do celebrate it for both of you.
Thank you.
And I look forward to be able to celebrate it for myself. So
That's right.
there are
That's
people like
right.
myself and others who need to hear that, and to need to
Mm-hmm.
know that this is a possibility. It is a reality. It's just all
Mm-hmm.
about
Oh,
planning and
definitely.
prioritizing. As
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
much as it's more so than it is about I have to be, 7-figure earner, just balling out of control before I can enjoy
Mm-hmm.
life. Because as we
Right.
know, life is just a blurb of time, and before we know it,
That's
it's here and it's gone. And what do you have to show for it when that time ends? You want to know that you made the most of it. That not
right.
only in the stuff that you enjoyed doing, but in the impact on the world that you made. So
Right.
you
Mm-hmm.
definitely, the two of you are definitely on path for achieving both. So the
Mm-hmm.
best to you on that. So with that said, again, it has been a pleasure having the two of you on just to connect and just to talk through your journeys. It has been
Mm-hmm.
inspiring to me. So I know that the same has been for those. It'll be for those who have an opportunity to listen to this podcast. And if you have tuned into the podcast and you enjoy what you've heard today, please subscribe, please share, please like, please comment. Greatly appreciate that. This is what this podcast is all about: is in empowering and inspiring and encouraging and uplifting people through our stories, our journeys, our trials and tribulations. And so this is what we do here at the Blessings in the Street
Mm-hmm.
podcast. And so just remember that here at this podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and where your journey is your joy. I am your
Mm-hmm.
host, Joseph B. Roberts. Thank you for tuning in. And until next time, God bless. Take care of yourselves and exercise that self care. And we look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Be well.